Well, we are live once again for another Tuesday. Everyone's favorite
Yes,
on a Tuesday. I am Mike Scala, the real Mike Scala,
the
and I'm joined
real.
by Jay Carter, who is the chair of BLM Tokyo and also known as Timid, one of the best hip hop MCs in the game, whose new single, We Were Never the Problem, has been playing on Shade 45, amongst other places. Good to see you, Timid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we've also got special guests in the building. Kutmaster Spaz, DJ extraordinaire from the 808 state, Hawaii. He's also a TV producer, teacher, and now author. So we're going to get into that a little bit as well.
I have to ask, are 808s big in Hawaii now because of the area code?
No, it's always been the same. I mean, nothing like 808 and stuff like that. But I mean, the cool thing about it is 808 is the whole state. It's not like a county. Mm-hmm. So it's across the whole state of 808. So it's been around for years. So I think back in the 80s, it was like, oh, we got an 808. But now it's just
Oh, you got to remember the 80s and 90s with the mini trucks and the big woofers in the bed. So yeah, it was 808s were massive.
Yeah.
So, did you have a mini truck back in the day?
I did not. I had a hoopty. I had a Dodge Dart. I couldn't put speakers in it because it'd probably blow the rust off. So.
Okay. I didn't know, like, did New York do that thing? Like in Hawaii back then, there was like the 80s and 90s, there were people who would customize like mini trucks and like Toyotas and Nissans or whatever, and just did like customize them. They put massive stereo systems with lots of bass in it.
Right.
And so they would lower the shocks on it, and some would put hydraulics and stuff. Was that a thing in New York too?
It happened, especially with the systems, not as much the hydraulics, but that was more of a West Coast thing.
Right. So it's probably where Hawaii got the influence a little bit. So I think on the West Coast, it was more the classic cars, but in Hawaii, it was more the trucks, the mini truck type of thing. So
right.
So we all got some hip hop in our background here. So I recently watched the movie Bodied, which was the movie that was produced by Eminem. Or executive produced by Eminem, shall I say. And it was about the battle rap culture. Now, it's a couple of years old, and I recently saw it. I've always wanted to see it, but I never got a chance to, but I did recently see it. Mike, you said you saw it, right?
I saw it a few years ago. If I recall correctly, he was brought on to executive produce it after it was already being made. I think he just kind of brought on to bring in some more star power. I'm not sure if it was initially his project, though.
Okay, because he wasn't in the movie at all. Like, you didn't see. I mean, they did bring up his name in it, so I don't know if you saw it or not, Spaz. But it's about the battle rap.
But I'm assuming they probably needed his money. That's probably why he became executive producer, because that's what he's like. Hey, you're kind of short on money. Can you drop some?
Yeah,
and also credibility, I would think, because there would be people watching it thinking that it was a ripoff of 8 Mile, but if you attach his name to it, then it kind of gives it that stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. It was definitely a little bit different than 8 Mile. It took a little bit more of it took a different approach. Instead of being more about, like, 8 Mile was about like M's life and his struggle to make it or go through that. This was more about the battle rap culture itself, and the decisions and the insults and the disses and just the whole talk and language within the culture, because it can be really, really vicious.
I'm trying to think if I saw this. Can you name a character that's in it? Because I think I may have seen this movie.
It was a little cartoonish, I think. The main character was someone who was not typically someone you would think would be a battle rapper or a rapper.
I did see this.
Saw it, right?
He was like kind of like a nerdy, and he just started writing, right? Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that was pretty vicious. That was gangsta a little bit.
and actually, a lot of the guys in it were actual battle rappers that are in the battle rap scene, and they did great. It was like, acting wise, like, you wouldn't have thought that,
they're playing themselves more or less.
Yeah, I guess true. And then of course Charlemagne the God was in there.
And they also had characters that were loosely based on actual battlers and personalities in the battle rap scene. Like there was a character of Lush One who hosts a lot of the grind time battles and stuff.
This is like 7 years ago it came out, I think.
It was, yeah, it was a while back. So yeah,
I think
I'm
it
very
was on
late.
Netflix at one point in time. So I don't know if it's on Netflix now, but I did see it on Netflix.
Yeah, so I'm very late to the party, but I saw it recently and I'm just like, it's on the top of my mind and like, yeah, so it was, but the rhymes, especially that final rhyme when he started talking about the guy's daughter and her illness, like that was just vicious. It was nasty. But I mean, are you a fan of battle rap?
I am. In high school, I got my ass kicked, so I did not enter the battle rap after high school, but I enjoyed watching it and going to the different, and then especially when he started doing grind time, without the beat, that was pretty sick too. Yeah.
That's an interesting topic, I think, in itself, because I know Timid and I used to go to Scribble Jam and look at the battling that was happening when it was to a beat. Completely different ball game than when it's a cappella. I mean, when it's a cappella, it's straight up bars. And so it gets, I think, more vicious because it really puts that center stage. Whereas when there's a beat involved, there's a whole element of flowing and riding the beat that's just removed. So it just kind of strips it all down and says, here are the disses, right? When it's a cappella, when there's a beat involved, there's a
Yeah, you are right, Mike, because like it gets vicious because they emphasize certain words because they don't have to stay on beat. So like they hit you with that line, you're like, oh, and
they don't
and
need to cover it up either, right? It's
right,
like
right,
yeah,
right.
all glory.
Yeah. Yeah. Scribble Jam was definitely a different type of vibe. So
Did you guys enter the battle scene?
nah. I entered,
times, but I never got into it.
yeah, I entered when we were the last Scribble Jam, I entered the music video competition.
Okay.
Yes, I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah. That was the first time that they had introduced it. And I think it was the last Scribble Jam before they canceled it.
2008. Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
Scribble and DJ Scribble put this on? Is that who it was?
Started it, yep.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Ohio. Eminem actually, I think, was in the finals one year. I
Oh,
think he lost to Juice.
Yeah. It was I don't think we have anything like that these days. It was maybe a big, like festival, so to speak, of independent and underground artists mainly, and it, drew out, 1,000 people or so every year. We had
More than
sponsors.
that. Yeah. It got pretty big.
Yeah.
so in Hawaii, what they wouldn't have jams like that. Basically, it was just a rivalry between two guys, and they would put $1,000 each to
Mm.
battle each other. And the
Mhm.
promoter would make money at the door, and of course the bar would make money at the bar. But yeah, it wasn't like a jam where everybody. I mean, they had that probably about last one was about 5 years ago, but now it's if you have beef with somebody, then put your money where your mouth is, and you drop $1,000, and the crowd is the deciding factor. So you want to bring all your friends or win over the crowd.
So nowadays, or I guess 5 years ago when they last did it, was it a cappella or to the beat?
It was a cappella.
Okay.
It was like they were doing that. I think it's called grind time, but yeah, they were doing all acapellas. But it got really vicious. Like I cringed, so I just wait for it to come out on YouTube because I didn't want to be there because it was getting I mean, it was getting raw and like I thought it was over the line. I mean, I figured there's some kind of code, but yeah, no holds barred. It was kind of it was getting. I mean, they would want to fight after because they couldn't handle.
And the
And I
whole
think-
purpose of the battle is really to get that frustration out in a productive way and not fight, right? That was
Right.
the physicality.
Right. It made that's what the original when we rapped to the beat was all, and then at the end we shake hands. But when it went a cappella, man, it was no holds bar. And I guess because people couldn't spit bars, they just spit trash. You know what I mean? Just talk major trash.
That's
So-
what it is, right? I mean, and there is still an art form. I don't want to make it sound like the acapella version is devoid of art. It's not. I mean,
No,
some
not at all.
artists, they spit a very intricate, even acapella, and it's very poetic oftentimes. But it does introduce a whole new element to it. Like you said, it could be much more vicious. And sometimes I think maybe they're going for the jugular more than they would when it was more about rapping to the beat.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, and you don't go into the battle rap scene unless you're ready for that. You know what I mean? Like that's the world. You got to know what you're walking into. You can't go in and then be like really thin skinned because they're gonna go at everything. You know,
That's exactly what I was gonna say. You gotta have thick skin. You can't because
got
they
it.
will. I mean, they become detectives. They find out everything, your birth name, your mom, your everything. I'm like,
I'm glad you brought that up. That's another difference nowadays with this new format. They'll know weeks in advance, maybe or a month in advance, who they're battling. So they've got all this time to do oppo research on them and write the most personal verse they can think of. Whereas in the old days, you go enter a tournament and maybe you would have some idea of who would be there, but like you're up against 15 other people rhyming. You each have, and you also have maybe like 45 seconds to say your verse and move on to the next. It's not like now where it's like, here's a month to prepare for someone and you can rap about them for an hour, right?
Yeah.
So in the old days, it was just like with their appearance. So you just would cap on their appearance, but now they dig deep, man, in your crazy.
No, I'm a fan of both of them. I think it's really dope. But yeah, I guess we've all seen the movie. I was gonna say if you haven't seen it, see it. But I just rewatched just the battles the other day on it because I like that part.
I'm gonna look for it. I'm gonna watch it again because, like I said, it was about 7 years ago, but it was a good movie. I didn't know Eminem executive produced it, so I gotta check that out again.
Do you think though that it made battle rap or hip hop in general seem too easy? Because like this, it showed someone who really had no connection to it coming in and just becoming a master and beating everyone in the game, doing it for what, a month or a few weeks. Mm-hmm. Do you think it kind of trivialized the seriousness of the art form?
Go ahead, Tim. You go.
I was gonna say I could see that because like he had never done it before. He was a slam poet, and so he was into the rhyming. I think what they were trying to do was try to make it so they're saying, well, this is the same. This is no different than poetry than poetry slams. Like this is all poetry. And so like people treating it with as less of an art form are missing the point. And so I think that's kind of where they were going at it.
You need to do that. I mean, do you need to have a character who's outside the world,
right,
in order to legitimize it to the rest of the world and say, well, he's not a hip hop guy and he's into it, so therefore you should like it? I mean, that almost seems insulting.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that a little bit at first. I'm thinking, well, why not just like someone? Why couldn't this character be someone from the culture or someone that was already into hip hop? Why do we have to follow, someone from, I don't know, whatever the college he was going to? I guess it was kind of like a preppy type of school. And
I feel like they also tried to make him relatable to a lot of people out there who are watching it, like who can see themselves in that person because they're not really from the hip hop world, but like if he could do it, I can do it.
Right. But see, the funny part is when they try to actually get into him, they're like, whoa, this is not as easy as they made it in the movie.
Right.
No, not at all. Yeah, you will get eaten alive.
Yep.
So like the one girl made the guy cry
on that, and about the idea of it potentially trivializing hip hop. Do you feel that way watching the movie?
Say that again?
No, I was asking Spaz what his thoughts were on that aspect of it. If he felt like it trivialized hip hop at all.
I felt it took away from the culture because I mean, I'm about the culture and understanding, what hip hop is. It's a culture, and rap is something you do, DJ is something you do, but hip hop is something you live. It's state of mind, and yeah, I think it took away that element. It was more like a rap movie, not a necessarily hip hop movie, but I think it took away from what hip hop is. But there's so many other movies that do honor hip hop, so. I think like what you said, Mike, earlier, I think they were trying to make it generalized. So not just the hip hop culture would watch it, but everybody would, you know what I mean? I think that's what they were trying to go with that movie, trying to make it general.
Yeah.
And I read into the background of it a little bit, like the main actor was actually a Disney Channel guy growing up. And a lot of people were worried, or his agents and them were worried of him taking this role because it was so negative, so not negative, but it was so vicious, and there's such language in it. They're like, some people dropped out. There was actually someone, a big name actor that was slated to be in there, but dropped out because their agents was worried that, they might be kind of untouchable in Hollywood after this. Like I didn't get why. But this guy from Disney who didn't know how to rap at all, like was like, yeah, let me get on that. I like the the thing. So
Well, here's a segue, I guess, from this to anti-bullying, because you see in battle rap, it's all about bullying your opponent, but you've dealt with bullying in real life. And so you could talk, I guess, about your story and what led you to writing this book that's out now.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that's why I never entered the battle rap scene, because it took me too much time. But yeah, I mean, a little backstory is up until 9 years old, I was a normal kid in mainstream school. And then I fell back, and when I was 9 years old, they didn't have the special education system in place and teachers that were trained. So they basically put me in the physically and mentally handicapped class. So all my classmates and neighbors and people who lived in my neighborhood just deemed me as a mental kid. And I had a target on my back. So I got teased for being mental. And the sad part, it wasn't only the kids or my friends, it was their parents. Their parents would say, hey, don't hang around that kid, like it was contagious, or that's going to happen to you. You're going to be put in a mental class. So from 9 years old all the way to I graduated high school, I had no friends and didn't go to any proms, didn't have a girlfriend or anything like that. So this book, Sped to Success, which is a play on words, because sped or like speeding to success, but sped, is about from when I was 9 years old all the way to 19, and how I dealt with the bullying, the people not having empathy, not having acceptance for me being different. So I wanted to write this because I used to go to schools. I used to perform, and then I would tell my story and how I overcame it. But as I got older, I kind of keep on doing school tours. So this book, my vision for it was where it could be in somebody's hands, no matter if they're in Japan or New York or in Kalihi in Hawaii, that they could read this and hopefully take away something, because it has the situation that I went through, then it has a life lesson of what I took away from it. And my hope is that whoever reads this, whether it's a teacher, a parent, a student, that they create like, oh my gosh, I went through something like this, and see what my life lesson, and make them reflect, like, what did they learn? Because it's never a lose when something goes bad. It's a learning, it's a lesson. Yeah. So that's why I was driven to write this book about anti-bullying and acceptance and learning empathy, because I think because of technology and everybody's here, they're not here, they're in their rooms, they don't even have to go to an arcade anymore. So I feel like there's a void, there's not much acceptance or empathy anymore with the new generation.
What would you say was the worst instance of bullying that you encountered growing up?
Man, there's so much instances, but I would have to say when a teacher would basically, and I don't even say call me out, but basically make A out of me, because she wasn't trained on how to handle a special ed student with ADHD, hyperactive, disorder. So she wasn't trained. So I think she taught with emotions. So she was offended. So she would basically, make me look like basically she just put a dunce cap and put me in the corner of the room, because that's the kind of thing she did. And I don't think she realized how much it affected me, because I looked up to her. She's my teacher. She was my mentor. And here she is making me look more foolish and feeling more dumb and more stupid and worthless. So I think an adult putting a child down or a student down it would have to see the one that hurt the most. But don't get me wrong, there are teachers in this book that I do honor, because teachers, my fifth grade teacher was the one that basically believed in me. She saw me for my potential versus my disabilities. So she would talk to me like what I was going to be. And she always said, you're going to be successful. You put your mind to it, believe in yourself. I believe in you. And later that led me to want to be that light for youth. And I became a teacher. So
and that was Miss Watase, right?
Yeah, Miss Watase, correct. Yeah, she was my fifth grade teacher. And up until that point, that whole fourth grade year was just horrible. Because like I said, they had this room with two doors, and they put a bookshelf in the middle of the room. And one side was the physically and mentally handicapped, and the other side was 7 of us. But the other students got bussed in from other counties and community. I was the only one that lived in Kaneohe. So when they went home, they would play with their friends, and the friends thought they were going private school, I think, or something. Whereas my neighborhood friends all saw me. So it was really rough.
Now, you mentioned like you're in the school systems now, and you've done school tours and such. And when you were going to school and they put you in this Sped program, which I tell you, that's the first time I heard the term, but I guess it's a common term. But now, someone who was going through ADHD then versus now, where they have teachers who are a little bit more trained to spot this or deal with it, or know a little bit more about it. Can you talk a little bit about some of those differences that you might see now?
Absolutely. So back then, Ritalin, I would say, was an experimental drug because it was basically new, but Ritalin would make you just feel like you're in your body, but you have no control. You're just sitting there, like kind of like high. And I hated that. I took that through middle school. I gained weight. I felt just cloudy. I don't remember most of my middle school because I was taking Ritalin. So when I got to high school, I stopped taking that. But now they actually have drugs that are more, and I don't say drugs, but medicine that is more in tune to them. And it's not Ritalin, it's other different medications. And of course, they have natural medications as well. But like you said, now there are people that understand, and knowledge is power. So now that they have specially trained special ed teachers, they know how to deal with it. So a lot of students don't even go into a special ed class. They're still in mainstream, but they have counselors and sometimes even teachers that sit in certain class with them to keep them focused and stuff like that. And this is more elementary school, elementary and middle school. As they go high school, they mature and they're able to, function on their own in mainstream classes. So yes, it has massively changed. Unfortunately, the bullying, the lack of empathy, lack of acceptance is still there. When I would go to special ed classes and speak to the students, they would come, I could see, as I was telling my story, I see tears running down their face. And so I put them on the side and they said, what you went through is what I'm going through. I'm like, this is 30 years later. Why haven't we evolved? So, I mean, this is what I do so I can be that light for them, that, knowing, and I guess bringing attention to teachers and parents that this is still happening. Look for what's going on in your child. If they're locking themselves in the room, they're not social, they don't have any friends, I mean, they need help. They need somebody that believes in them and tell them, I love you, I believe in you, and keep enforcing that they need to believe in themselves. I mean, that's the first thing I tell when I tell students or youth, is that you got to realize nobody's coming to save you. You are your hero. You are the one that has to believe in you first. Because if you don't believe in you, nobody's going to believe in you. And I just keep on pushing that. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Conceive what you want to be in life. Believe in yourself and then achieve by making a plan. A lot of people have dreams, but they never put a plan in place. And a dream without a plan is just a dream. So that's basically what I continue to do. And that's what this book is. It's a tool to help further that mission.
And what better person to help someone who's dealing with that than someone like yourself who's also been through it. So you can show people that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. It talks about that in the book. But man, I'm not gonna lie, when I used to do these school tours, especially when I go into the special ed classes, when I do the gyms, I just hype them up, tell my story and stuff like that. But when I would go into classes, it took me 3 days to recover because I could feel what they're feeling. And it took me back to being a child and being bullied. And so that was part of the reason I said, okay, I got to do something, because I'm 3 days emotional after that. You know what I mean? So it's just sad to see that it's still happening. And, suicide for youth is high. And so I'm hoping that I can, be the difference for a lot of these youth. And this book will open the eyes of parents, teachers, mentors, and give hope to our youth, tweens and teens.
I think
you get the book.
Okay, so
Sped to-
Amazon. Yeah, it's Amazon Sped to Success. The best way I could do it, because I self-published. So you go to Amazon, you search Sped to Success or Kutmaster Spaz, Kutmaster with a K, and it will pop up. And actually, so I have a business partner. When I was writing this book, I had her, because I had about 5 different eyes look at it for grammar, for typos, and to make sure I was being authentic and be myself and not making it like I was some scholar or something like that. But my business partner, Kelly Marathi, she said, okay, I know you're going for middle school and high school, but it has to start earlier, like 1st and 2nd grade. So she wrote a children's book, a spin-off of my book. She planned to do 8. She has 2 out right now, and it's called Kamoho the Chameleon. And if you put Sped to Success, it usually pairs it up, because Kamoho the Chameleon, she likes to play pranks. I don't like geckos or any lizards. So she made the character a damn gecko and or a Jackson chameleon. So it's me as a child and how I dealt with, and it's basically taking the Sped to Success stories and making it like a Disney version with a lesson and a life lesson at the end of how it turned out. So yeah, that was, I couldn't see the vision, but then when she released it, a lot of elementary school teachers was like, oh my gosh, we need something like this. So yeah, she has Kamo the Chameleon plays hide and seek, and Kamo the Chameleon doesn't like school. And it's pretty sad. The hide and seek one is basically about, I went to the park and I rode my bike. I locked my bike on a fence, and these boys said, hey, you want to come play hide and seek with us? And I was like, yeah, oh my God, for once I'm being accepted. And so they said, okay, you're out. Counted to 100, went looking for them. They basically ditched me. But the messed up part was when I went back to my bike, one of them had a wrench and they took my bike apart in pieces. So I had to walk home 9 years old with my bike in pieces, 2-3 blocks. And in the book, it tells how I overcame that and what the life lesson I took away from that.
Wow.
Crazy.
So with the name is Sped to Success, obviously the play on words goes from where you're at to where you are today. So how did you go from, that rough childhood, the bullying, into becoming a DJ and entertaining, crowds in the music?
That's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked that. So I was blessed at 10 years old. I realized that I love music and I wanted to do something in music. This DJ had a school dance in a cafeteria, and I went to it and I watched the DJ as he played rock music. Everybody's jumping around. And then he played slow music and they're like slow dancing, lovey-dovey. Then he plays hip hop, was throwing their hands in the air like they just don't care. And I said, oh my God, he is like a conductor, a maestro controlling the crowd. And I said, that's what I want to be. So I ran home, told my mom, I'm going to be a DJ. She's like, okay, we're not rich, so you got to come up with a plan. And at the time, I didn't know she was setting me up for success because I had to get a job. And the only job I could get at 10 years old was delivering newspapers. So I delivered newspaper for 5 years until I got my worker's permit, worked at Zippy's, washing dishes. And by 16, I had $10,000 and I had saved up some of my birthday money to buy Radio Shack turntables. And I kept on going. And so music saved my life. Unfortunately, a lot of youth don't find their passion until later in life, but that's another thing I always point out is find and follow your passion, whatever you're passionate about. Don't worry about the money. A lot of people think success is how much cars you have in your garage, how much money you have in your bank account, how big your house is. Success is finding something you love to do, because if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. True. And so I tell them, don't worry about, I know, like, especially back in the 80s, you got to become a doctor, you get money, lawyer, your parents instilled that money is success. And I was glad at a young age, I realized that success is doing what you love. And so I stuck with it. And I remember when I was in my junior year, my mom told me, okay, so you're going to be senior next year. What are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, I told her I'd be a DJ. She's like, no, that's a hobby. You're going to want a car, you want a house, and I said, no, Mom, I'm going to be a DJ. She's like, I don't think you can make the money, because my mom didn't understand, how much money a DJ can make. And so I made a deal with her and I said, Mom, can you just support me until I'm 21, meaning just let me do what I want to do. And if I don't make it as a DJ, by 21, I will convert and go to the military or get a job at a fast food or whatever, start from the ground up. But I worked hard, believed in myself. And by the time I was 19, I was making more than my mom and dad put together being a DJ. And so she's like, I was wrong. So I went out, got a house, got a car, and basically just started, just DJing all over the world, going to Philippines, Italy, up and down the West Coast, of course, here in Hawaii. So it was just, I guess, Timmy, to answer your question, it was just believing in my passion, in doing something in music. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be a dancer because it was, kind of fluffy. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be a B-boy. But DJing was pretty much, and I tried to be, I was a rapper for a little bit, but like I said, in my junior year, I got taken out by a freshman in his courtyard. And I was like, okay, I'm not battle rapping anymore. I remember the lyrics that took me out where I was like, he said, "You think you're cool, but you're whack. Now get on your knees and suck my egg sack." Wow. I was like, how do I answer this? Because
that's funny, because I actually saw a Kanye interview where he said he was battling a similar story actually when he was in school. And he had this verse that he came up with that was all intricate. He thought it was going to win everyone over. And then his opponent said one little elementary level rhyme because they were kids, but that's what worked for that crowd. Like you're a poopy head or something really stupid. And everyone went, oh, and that was the line that won the battle. And his verse that he spent a year writing didn't do anything to that crowd.
Exactly. It took me 1 week, and I was doing I was like the fast rap, I'm like Fushnikins. I was like trying to rap really fast and like intricate and make sure I enunciate my words so you can hear it, but it's fast. So I did this fast rap, and then like you said, he just did. You think you're cool, but you're whack. Now get on your knees and suck my egg sack. And everybody went, oh, and I was done.
Wow.
I was done. So I said, okay, I'm not gonna battle rap anymore. I'll just be a DJ. I'll be behind the turntables. That's my shield. But I did enter DJ battles, so that was another level. That was pretty cool because you just get your music to talk. You're not spitting rhymes.
That's what's up.
There's a microcosm there for where the world is. Sometimes it's like, I don't know. Sometimes, you have to know your audience, and objectively, you might be the better person, or you might have the better material, or whatever it is, better prepared for the situation, but perception becomes reality. We see that in politics, we see that everywhere in this life, right? And sometimes we feel like we're actually objectively better at what we're doing, but it doesn't matter because of how it's received. Sometimes people appeal to that lowest common denominator, and unfortunately it works.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, I think know your audience, and that translates to a lot of things. You could say whatever. If you're speaking to the people that are receiving it, then it's going to go over well. So,
but what does it say when what works is just such garbage? Right? It speaks to the state of the world that we're in.
Yeah. In different places, it is a sad statement of affairs. In others, it could just be that you're playing to the crowd, and then knowing what the crowd wants to hear.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So, even like being a DJ, like you said, you got to know your crowd. And even though the music I'm playing to me is garbage, but they're feeling it. So,
right.
I'm an entertainer, not just a guy who plays music. So I try to appeal to the crowd. But yeah, I don't agree with a lot of the music, especially today's stuff. I'm like, oh, this is garbage. But they're
shots fired. Shots fired.
I was thinking,
hey, I'm old school hip hop, so and I don't want to sound like a grandpa. In my day, we used to have Run DMC, Curtis Blow. What do you guys know about that? Me and Rick Campbell. I'm not trying to be that. There are some music that I like, but a lot of it I'm not
beyond music. With the Twitter generation that we have, everything has to be sound bites. Cable news, everything's got to be sound bites. The long diatribe that's nuanced, like we like to say, we talk about nuance. That doesn't always work with the mass audience. They want it to be fast food and easily digestible.
Right.
Which ironically, fast food often isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And as even from the DJ perspective and talking to your audience and all that, as a DJ, you are very knowledgeable about different music, right? You keep your it's your craft, right? So you know about not only the mainstream artists, you know about some of the underground releases, and there's some things that you're thinking, my God, this is amazing. But everyone has heard what's been on the top 40. And so you're like, here, you should hear this. And they're like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, this that I heard 100 times yesterday because I'm at a party and this is what I want to jam to. And so, yeah, that's, can be difficult. I know the struggle. I was a DJ for a while too out in Hawaii. But it was the mobile disco days and Aloha Tower dance days. Yeah.
When did I meet you, Timid? Was it in the 90s?
It was in the 90s we met. It was probably in that scene, in that music scene. I don't remember the exact time, but yeah, probably in that scene.
I think I always had mad respect for you because your rap was real and authentic, and you weren't trying to pose where a lot of people were trying to be gangsters, wanksters, and you always kept it authentic and knowledge. And I always respected your craft in what you did. Because like I said, a lot of people would pose and fake the funk to try and jump on the bandwagon. So I was, you always kept it real.
But it's funny, like in high school, when I first started to write rhymes, try to write what I was hearing, but it wasn't my voice. And so it wasn't until I started writing my voice until it started to sound right. It started, so, it also speaks to that.
Deep.
Yeah.
And that speaks, I think, kind of to what the book is about, right? Like finding yourself, overcoming those obstacles. Once you're true to yourself, like you said, it's not work. You're not trying to put on a show. You're just being yourself, and other people can feel that. And I think that's one positive thing. We talked about how people try to appeal to the lowest common denominator. And that's an unfortunate aspect of what we deal with. On the flip side, I think people do feel authenticity. They know when you're being true to yourself, and that gives you space to really be anyone. Anyone can be in hip hop or in anything that they do. They can do well at it if it's truly them, and people will respect that. And people, I think, give space to appreciate all different kinds of people as long as they are being themselves.
Exactly. And that's the people you want around you. Because if the people wants that fake stuff, you don't want them because they're not real. So the people that accept you for you being yourself or being authentic, that's the people you want because they're real people, you know what I mean? Whereas all these people, like you said, jumping on the bandwagon, they're not real because they won't be here tomorrow. They won't be here when you fall and be like, oh, on to the next, somebody who's more successful than you.
Absolutely. So the book is Sped to Success. It's on Amazon and I would imagine other outlets, Barnes & Noble, all that, digital and physical copies.
Kindle is next. So in about a month, I'm dropping it on Kindle because I got people like, oh, we don't read hard, we want Kindle. So I said, okay. But in Hawaii in June, I'm going to do a book signing at Kahala Mall. After that, then I'll release the Kindle, and that'll be my next venture in promoting that.
Okay, sounds good. Everyone should check that out. So we've got some other topics to get to as well. We had a poll last week, Mike.
Yes. And once again, mine was evenly split, really down the middle, which might be a surprise to some, but we asked about social media rights, free speech rights on social media. And in particular, should users of social media be protected when it comes to the First Amendment and their constitutional protections, not just against the government, but against the owners and operators of the sites. So in effect, would it be illegal or should it be illegal to censor what you write on social media? Now, like I said, mine was about 50-50.
Yeah, mine ended up being about 50-50 as well. I think one thing I think is probably important is that a lot of people don't understand or don't get that the First Amendment protects your free speech when it comes to the government censoring you, not when it comes to private companies. And so I think that's important for people to make that distinction. So, what do you think, Spaz? Should you be, Twitter be allowed to choose?
I think we should be able to say what we feel. I don't think we should be censored. I know TikTok does that. If you go on TikTok and you say, I am not vaccinated, the caption will say, I'm vaccinated. So TikTok already does that. If you say, I am not vaccinated, it will say, or you say, I'm unvaccinated, it will say, I'm vaccinated in the captions, if you put the captions on. So already TikTok is censoring. So I know you're exactly what you're saying, but I believe we should be able to have a voice. That was the whole point of the First Amendment, is for the people to have a voice. And when you start censoring them, that's kind of jacked up. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there are a lot of people that say stuff that either sound crazy and stuff like that. But for the most part, that's the whole part where people are, come to America, the freedom of speech. Like, they're able to speak their mind, and that's their opinion. And we got to respect that's their opinion. Not that we have to agree with it, or,
But
So,
should we
yeah,
also have to respect the people who run these platforms or these sites, or let's say it's a Facebook group? Do they have a right to free speech to say what they want and don't want on their platform that they control?
I think so. I mean, the hard part, that this comes to business end, is that, and I tell people this because a lot of people run their businesses off their social media. And I said, you still need a website, because the social media you don't own. At any time, they can shut you down. You're done. So if you put all your marketing, all your business on IG and somebody reports you, IG can freeze your account and all kind of different things. So I do understand that going on the social media, it's a thin line, because it's not owned by us. It's like if we came up with a website and we made a website and did a freedom of speech, and then we got censored. Oh yeah, that's wrong. But on these social media, they're owned by a private company. And when you agree, if you read the fine prints, it tells you that they can do this and they can do that. So it's hard, because I know people want to voice their opinion, but I think they first got to realize that Facebook, IG, Twitter, TikTok is owned by an entity. It's not public domain. You know what I mean? It's a private company that has the right to censor you to protect their assets and their company, from getting sued and stuff like that. So that's where there's a thin line, because it is a business. And so I do understand that. So if they want to do freedom of speech, they got to open up, do their own website. Then they can have at it.
Right, exactly. And that's a good point. Like, if I had a website and someone came onto my website and started writing things that I didn't want on there, I would not be happy if the government told me I couldn't remove that from my own website.
Right. Absolutely.
I would say that was a violation of my free speech. So it's like everyone's free speech rights in conflict here. But I think that also alludes to social media being looked at culturally as different from a private website. Even though it is, we think of it as a place where we just go and speak openly, and it's a public place. And maybe that's why culturally we expect to have more freedom of speech on a space like that than if it was just mikeswebsite.com, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
speaking of, you had something else on this, Jay?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of articles, because I wrote a whole article on this, which is actually out in the wave this week. It's called Scala's Rap, Social Media, Free Speech. You can check that out. I wrote a draft piece that I was thinking of setting this coming week about the Supreme Court draft decision, which is set to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I was actually advised not to put it out because people are so passionate about the issue, and understandably so. And I was trying to take a different approach with it. I was trying to break down the decision from a legal perspective and really criticize it from a constitutional law angle, which I thought was something I could bring to the table that might be a little bit different from some of the other voices out there. However, I understand that people are so energized and emotional about this right now because it's such a big thing, and it really affects people's lives in such a deep way, that taking a detached approach, even if it's the scholarly thing to do, might come off as insensitive. And so I'm holding off on putting out this article, but there's just so much to say on it. I stayed up late last night reading this 98-page decision by the Supreme Court, and I think it's a bad decision, even removing my opinions, my beliefs on policy. I'm trying to remove that from the conversation. Just looking at it neutrally, to the best of my ability, I think that it's not made with sound legal reasoning. And I think it's fair to make that point, to make that criticism.
I agree. But, Mike, we live in cancel culture now. So I think your colleagues are advising you to tread lightly, because even though you have your opinions, you have the freedom of speech to say that. But man, people turn on you like that nowadays. I trip, man. Like our mayor out here was doing great during the pandemic. He said one thing and they wanted to cancel him.
But doesn't this also relate to what we were just talking about people being themselves? I mean, why don't we have the freedom to be us and to say what we feel without thinking we're going to be canceled or any of this, crazy stuff that goes on nowadays? And again, if we're talking about free speech, yeah, people have a right to say that they don't like our speech and they want to boycott us or whatever. That's all part of free speech. But again, going back to culture, why shouldn't the culture be that people should be embraced for being who they are?
I agree. I think that's where the shift happened. And I don't know when it happened. I don't know if it's what happened, and that's why, that's why I came up with the book, because, it's part of acceptance. It's part of empathy, understanding, respecting that person's opinion. But this generation is so fast just to cancel you. Like, they just look for people that they can cancel. And Mike, it gets ugly. I mean, death threats, people calling your family. Like you said, they can Google you and threatening your family, where you live, taking pictures of the outside of your house. Like, that's how crazy they are. That's, you know what I mean? So it's not even them just firing back. It's them being vicious, and they're keyboard warriors. So, back in the day, we put these up and up, meet you in the back parking lot. It's not like that anymore, man. They're making threats and you don't even know who they are. So that's where it's hard. And it's like, you're right. I mean, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Like, and it's sad that we can't be ourselves and say our opinion. We have to think twice or three times.
I'm going to say it anyway. You know what? I'm good. And again, this is not an opinion on the issue. I'm not speaking on the issue. The controversy here is that I was trying to do this in a way that did not interject my own personal feelings. And the feedback I got was, if I say something that sounds neutral, it's going to sound like I don't care about the issue. And that's not the case. I'm trying to take a lawyer's approach here. And I'm trying to say that the opinion as written is trash from a legal perspective, from a constitutional perspective. What I'm saying is that if you read the opinion that they put out, and today Justice Roberts said that that's not the final opinion. So maybe some of the criticism will be dealt with. And for the first time ever, the Supreme Court will revise its opinion based on public feedback. I don't know. But here's the deal. If you read the opinion as it stands now, what they're saying is that the right to abortion that was codified or recognized by Roe v. Wade was found from different provisions of the Constitution. First, there was a right to privacy, which was found in the Bill of Rights, when you have freedom of association in the First Amendment, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures in the Fourth, and so on and so forth. They read into that this right to privacy. And then later on, we have a due process clause of the 14th Amendment. We said that there's a liberty interest protected by that, and the right to privacy is included in that. But if you read the Constitution, nowhere in there does it say there is a right to privacy. That was implied from the other parts of the Constitution. All right, fine. This has been our framework for many years in the United States. Now, the right to abortion, along with other rights, like the right to use contraception without government interference, the right to have intimate contact with your partner outside of a marriage without government interference. All these things were read into this right to privacy, which in itself is read into the Constitution. This opinion that came out last night basically said the right to privacy is implied, and so is the right to abortion in itself applied in that right to privacy. That's a step too far for us. And what they did is they said that there was no history of the right to abortion being recognized in America, but they went back to the 13th century, which is way before there was a United States, and they stopped it at about 1900. So they're looking at ancient history. They're not looking at current history, but nonetheless, they're saying that it's not deeply rooted in history, therefore it doesn't exist. Okay, if you're going to do that, if that's your logic, then that would also seem to invalidate all of the other rights that we have that are derived from that same principle, which is the right to privacy, which again is not written in the Constitution, but we all recognize it. So for example, we have the right to contraception, to use birth control, without the government telling us we can't. That analysis constitutionally is the same as the analysis that gives us the right, or gave us the right to an abortion. So if you're going to overturn this and use that reasoning, you would also be overturning all of these other things as well that we recognize as rights. The court then said, we understand that, and abortion is different though, because it's a unique act. And that was it. That was their analysis. It's a unique act. So all of this legal, and went for 98 pages, was really nonsense, because either you're going to be consistent with your logic or you're not. And this is a logical inconsistency. It's not sound analysis. There's so much more I can say on this, but I actually, you know what? I'll keep going, and I'll leave it at this. they also go on for pages about this idea of honoring precedent, or stare decisis, it's called, it's a Latin term, but the importance of precedent. And they're saying that they know they'll be criticized for overturning their own opinion and basically not honoring the precedent. And then they go on to list times throughout history where they overturned themselves. So we do have the ability to overturn ourselves. The first example that they raised was Brown v. Board of Education, which was a landmark Supreme Court decision saying that you could not have segregated public schools. That overturned the principle called separate but equal, which was the law before. There was a horrible Supreme Court case from 1898 called Plessy v. Ferguson, where they said that it was okay to have separate train cars for Black people and white people because separate did not mean unequal. It was separate but equal. That was the law in 1898. In 1954, they overturned that with Brown v. Board of Education, and they rightfully said that separate is inherently not equal. So they cited this as a way to like pat themselves on the back and say, yeah, you see, we could overturn ourselves, and sometimes it's good to do that. But again, if this is the case you're bringing up, what they're saying is that the history of abortion was that it was not legal, right? Like in the old times, you have to look at the old times to see that the history was not kind to the notion of abortion. Well, then why wouldn't you look at the history of separate but equal and say, well, in the old times, that was considered a permissible thing, separate but equal, right? No, they rightfully overturned themselves because they evolved, society evolved, and we had a better understanding of the law and the Constitution and how we should treat people. And so you can't rely just on these old time decisions, cases and laws from the 13th century. No, you have to put it into the context of today, but they failed to do that. So again, it's a garbage decision from a constitutional perspective, saying nothing about my personal beliefs.
Right. You've been stewing all night for that one.
I'm upset, and I am passionate about it. And you know what? And maybe it comes off more on this than it would in an article, because in an article I try to use more neutral language, I guess, and
right.
You can see how passionate I can be about it. I try to keep it very even keel, but you know, it's just a terribly written decision. It's a terribly decided. Not to mention the damage it's going to do to so many people in the country.
I think that's I mean, I don't think there was anything wrong with what you said, and you did it from a perspective of the legal argument, and you broke down that aspect of it. And I think that's something that's valuable to look at as well, not just
I think it needs to be
what someone's opinion is of the actual thing. Like that's not even what you're talking about. Actually, from a law perspective, from was this written well? I think it's a valuable.
Was the reasoning sound? And like
it's valuable.
There is a danger that if you do that, people will say you don't care because it's like, this is too intellectual. This is,
right.
cynical. But I think that's something that needs to be part of the conversation. Who's going to say that? Who's going to criticize the Supreme Court for the way they wrote their opinion from a constitutional perspective, not just from a policy perspective?
Right. When see,
it's like they backed into this decision. Basically, the court is saying, even though they're writing, they're literally writing, we're just doing our job. I think they even put that in there. We're just doing our job. But the reasoning reveals that no, they backed into this decision based on their own policy beliefs.
Right. Yeah, and that could also have an effect down the road. What if they decide to take aim at like Brown versus Board of Education and want to reverse that and use the same type of logic?
Yes, exactly right. And that's the point. And they said, well, this holding only applies to abortion because it's a unique act. Again, but that's not a constitutional analysis. And the door is still open now for them to come back and say, oh, birth control is also unique. The right to intimate conduct with your partner, that's also unique. Anything could be unique in its own way. I mean, that's not an analysis. That's not legal reasoning. And so the door is really open based on this decision to undo all of those rights that we understand ourselves to have now based on this interest of privacy.
Right. So I'm going to go back just a little bit here in the chat. They're asking what exactly happened with this. Yesterday, there was a leaked document that came out with this upcoming decision from the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, which is basically giving constitutional protection to people that have abortions, and it's recognized at the federal level. So when it's not done and said yet, when the decision is published in roughly about 2 months, then it will be basically up to the states to decide whether or not abortion is legal or not in that state. So if you're in a red state, you're probably not going to be able to get abortions anymore. And so this is what people are upset about and debating right now.
Right. The current framework that we have is kind of clunky, admittedly. And again, in the interest of fairness, if you read Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, which are the two cases that created this right to abortion that we understand ourselves to have, the court kind of acted a little bit as legislators. I mean, I hate to say that because some people are going to say, hey, that's a right-wing talking point. But there is some validity to the idea that they basically wrote a law on what abortion is and how it can be regulated. Not that I thought it should be struck down, but if you read the original cases, what they ended up saying is that pre-viability, which is viability is the period where a fetus can survive on its own outside the uterus. Pre that period of a pregnancy, the state could not regulate abortion without they could not regulate it, and they could not give you. I'm trying to phrase this, I guess, in not legalese, but in layman's terms. But basically, they use the phrase undue burden, meaning that they couldn't put a substantial obstacle in the way of you getting an abortion at that time. After viability, they said the state could regulate it, but they had to make an exception for life and health of the mother. But aside from that, they could even make it illegal if they wanted to. So there was this period of viability where they said, before this point, you have a right to do it. After this point, the state has a right to do what it wants within reason. That is being thrown out by the Supreme Court. And what they're saying is state can now do whatever it wants at any time.
Right. And I think I did get into a bunch of conversations yesterday, or just listened to a bunch of the chatter that was going on Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse discussions and whatnot. And I think a lot of people are concerned with basically what they can do from here. People that support having Roe v. Wade are concerned what they can do from here, because this is going to be, pretty much it's going to happen. So in 2 months' time, that's going to be the new law of the land, so to speak. And Republicans, the conservatives, have been chomping at the bit for decades to overturn Roe v. Wade. So you better believe that they're going to be ready on day one to put something forth to try to, ban abortion in their states and whatnot. So, voting is going to be pretty much one of the main powers that people will have as far as in the midterms, getting in people who think more like you. If you want a certain outcome, you need to go to the ballot box and make sure that they're in office to try to fight these things for you. Otherwise, there's really not much else that can be done outside of that. So
that's a good point, because we have the midterms coming up and all the data showed that there was more energy on the Republican side than the Democratic side. This might change that. Now, federally, there's really not much that could be done when the Supreme Court is kicking the law and the right to abortion to each individual state. This is becoming a state issue now, according to this decision. So you have to understand, though, that a lot of these state elections coincide with the federal one. So if you have Democrats with more enthusiasm coming out to vote in these state elections, that could also play a role in what happens in the midterms.
Big issue here. That's one of the biggest controversial issues in the
I thought it
US.
was decided. I mean, and that's what the Supreme Court had said before, essentially, that this issue was decided. And it seems like we're going backwards in society to relitigate issues of last century that should have already been behind us.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be more. There was a story also that we wanted to touch on briefly about this, the package that's being set forth in New York.
Right, so something that does have bipartisan support. Was it 76%, 78%?
Right.
New Yorkers said that they supported this. It was a package, set of bills that would make it easier to overturn a wrongful conviction. And also it went further than that. It even said that a minor would have to consult with a lawyer before waiving his or her Miranda rights. That's big as well.
Right. Now, see, I don't know about, I mean, most people, but I thought that, police couldn't even question a minor unless there was a lawyer present. I didn't know that there was, I know they do it, but I just thought that was part of,
And that's what the Miranda right is, right? Like they say you
Right.
have the right to an attorney. You see it on TV all the time, right? You have the right to an
Right.
attorney, and you say kind of will be used against you and all that kind of stuff. They have to say that and basically give them the chance to have a lawyer present. But a lot of people don't realize in the situation that they're so stressed. A lot of them, like in this case, they're kids, so they don't fully understand their rights, and they don't realize that it's wise to not say anything without a lawyer there. But sometimes they're told that they have a right to a lawyer, and then it's kind of glossed over, and before they know it, they're in an interrogation.
So I think that's, what's good about it is, I think everyone should be able to agree that wrongful convictions are something that we should deal with swiftly. Innocent people should not be put away for any reason. And this has bipartisan support. And I think, it's a package that's being shopped around in New York, but it sounds like something that should be spread out nationwide.
I would think so. And this goes, I guess, back to the idea of federalism and what you could do at the federal level versus the state level. A lot of what you do, especially when it comes to policing and criminal justice, and now according to the Supreme Court, abortion is going to be completely up to the states. But a lot of what you can do legally, it has to be done at the state level. There really is no federal intervention in a lot of these. The federal constitution is limited in what it allows the federal government to do. Most of it is up to the individual states, which is why what happens at the state level really affects our lives a lot more than what happens in Congress or with the president, even though that's what you see on TV. If you turn on cable news, you think it's all about that. But that's really more showmanship at the end of the day than something that really affects your daily life.
So, yeah, how about you, Spaz? You any political aspirations there?
I understand exactly. I like Mike's, I don't want to say argument, but I like his presentation because like he said, he was presenting data where the Supreme Court seemed like it's politics and emotion. Whereas when Mike was speaking, he was presenting data and explaining what the outcome could be if this is the road that they're going to take, because they're going to overturn a lot of things. So I was intrigued. I was like, you go, man. You ever thought about being a lawyer?
I am a lawyer.
I know that it's a joke, Mike. It's a joke.
I got you.
I could tell by the way the language you used and everything that you said, but it made sense. Like you said, I like that you presented data and explaining, and that the fact that they went ancient history and not current event history, the last 20, 30 years, they went almost 100 years.
And that's really insulting to the reader's intelligence. I mean, I understand when they say that the constitutional principles has to be deep rooted in history. So deep rooted suggests you go back, but that doesn't mean you ignore the whole past 100 years. I mean, to start in the 13th century, first of all, if they're talking about this nation's history, that's not this nation. Mm-hmm. So it's relevant for context, yes, but to lean on that and go for pages and pages on what happened in the Dark Ages, I mean, come on, that's taking the word originalist too far. And really it's not even being an originalist, it's being before there was a constitution, right?
Yeah, it sounded like 98 pages of cover up and BS from what you told me.
Basically sums it up.
But
they tried, right? Like it's a cover up, like you said. They tried to make it make sense within a constitutional framework, but then they even, if you read into it, they admit that they're full of shit because they say, no, because they actually say in there, this opinion only counts on abortion. So that means that the entire analysis that you did doesn't apply, because that same analysis could be used on all these other issues. So the analysis is not real.
Because they wanted this specific action.
They wanted the outcome.
They wanted to make that outcome happen any way that they couldn't make it happen, is what it sounds like, the way it's written.
And the fact they're using the word unique, and like you said, they can use that for anything. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a BS cover-up word, like, hey, because this is unique. Almost every case is unique, and you can, like you said, they might use that later down the line. Hey, let's revisit this because this is a unique situation.
It's so unique.
Yeah. So we got to get the poll for this week, and we were talking about the wrongful conviction article and how this package would seek to bar deceptive interrogation practice, require minors to consult with lawyers before waiving their Miranda rights, and allow more people who pled guilty to crimes they didn't commit have their cases reviewed. And so this has a lot of support. So I think, do we think there should be, since wrongful convictions can cause a lot of harm to people in their lives that can't be undone, does the state and the government have a responsibility to ensure that there's a pathway to exoneration in wrongful conviction cases? How's that for a poll?
Sounds good. I would expect that to be supported by people of all political stripes, but we'll see what kind of feedback we get from it.
Yeah, we'll see. Because then you got, people that oppose, they're like, oh, well, if you didn't do anything wrong, you wouldn't have been arrested, or you wouldn't have been, like, it's not so cut and dry all the
I think
time.
everyone believes, I mean, I don't know. Do you think anyone really believes that only people get arrested who deserve it?
No, they believe that when it's people that they don't like, or opinions and things that they don't like, then they believe that. But then when it comes on to them, it's like, oh no, I'm being treated unfairly, right? So yeah, I think that's, it's a kind of that split thing that we've got going on in society.
Well, yeah, I also wanted to mention, I guess, really give an update to our viewers on the lieutenant governor situation, because we covered that on a prior episode about how the New York State lieutenant governor was indicted, but it seemed like, due to the election law, that it was going to be too late to remove his name from the ballot for the upcoming primary. The state just passed a new law that would allow that to happen. They said that one reason that your name could come off a ballot is if you were indicted. So this conveniently opens the door for him, and he is exercising that right now to remove his name from the ballot. The lieutenant governor who's replacing him is actually a congressman named Antonio Delgado, who I have some experience with as well. But he's going to be the new lieutenant governor, and he's also going to be running on the line in the primary. So he'll be one of the candidates you could vote for lieutenant governor in the upcoming primary, thanks to this new law that was passed, really just for this one situation, but it's the law now. The other part, I guess, is probably even a bigger issue relating to this, is that I mentioned on the show previously, a court had paused the lines that were drawn. Every 10 years, you have to redraw the lines as a result of the census. So the districts change throughout the states. A court had found them to be unconstitutional, and more recently actually decided that they had to be thrown out. And we have to draw all new lines now for our congressional seats in New York and for our state Senate seats. There's also a lawsuit pending that could affect the assembly seats as well. So I practice election law. I won all of my election law cases this year, only to find out that they don't count. We got to start all over, basically, because we have to redraw the lines. Everyone has to petition all over again. And, it's like round two, deja vu, the same thing. People would say, well, aren't you happy about that? There's more money for you, better for business. That's cool, but it's not all about money, as we talked about before on this show. I was happy with the fact that I won those cases and they meant something. And right. Now it's like all that work for nothing. You have to start from scratch. I don't like that. I was busy these past few months. I was very busy, staying up all night, nights and weekends. For what? These cases are moot now. I'm not happy about it.
Do it again. You got to do it again.
All over again with new districts.
Yeah. That kind of happened. That first campaign that we did, right in the middle of it, they decided that they were going to change the lines.
Well, they were changing that. They have to, as a result of the census. And so the law is that, and again, it's a constitutional idea, the districts of a state have to have roughly equal population so that the voters in those districts have the same power as voters in other districts. So when they do the census every 10 years, they figure out that the population has shifted and they have to redraw the line so that the districts can remain equally populated. But what ended up happening here is the court decided that the process was too gerrymandered, that the Democratic Party in this case, because they had control over the legislature, they exerted too much political influence over the way these lines were drawn, especially in light of the fact that the voters of the state a few years ago voted for a bipartisan independent commission and basically to remove the politics from the process. They said that was not done here. There was an attempt to draw these lines in a bipartisan way, which was rejected by the legislature, happens to be democratically controlled. They drew lines which were found by this judge and upheld by the Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state, to be unconstitutional, that it was in violation of the voters' will to draw them in a politically neutral way. So it is what it is. At this point, the lines have to be redrawn. We were going to have a primary in June, June 28th was going to be the primary for all of our state level seats and our congressional primaries for Congress. Now it looks like we're going to have two different primaries. We're going to have a June 28th primary for the governor's race and for a statewide race, lieutenant governor, controller, and so forth. And I guess for assembly at this point, which is kind of strange. And then in August, there's going to be another primary for these new seats that are being redrawn now. There's new congressional seats and the new state Senate seats that have to be redrawn with all new lines. So again, the whole process has to repeat itself. Also, this means more money for the state because we have another election to conduct. The point that I've been raising, by the way, which I think everyone so far has been happy to ignore, is that when you petition for governor in New York to make the ballot, there is a requirement that you get signatures from half of the congressional districts in the state. And so if those congressional lines are thrown out, shouldn't those petitions now not be valid? Shouldn't they have to petition again for governor with these new congressional lines? People are just ignoring that entirely and are like, no, we're going to keep the governor's race as it was and go on June 28th with that. I don't think those petitions are valid. I think someone could follow also on that point as well.
Mike, it's unique. That's why.
Yeah, it's unique. Exactly right. That's the reason. Running for governor is such a unique thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we had a lot going on today. Appreciate Kutmaster Spaz for joining us and telling us about Sped to Success. I think that's inspirational messaging is something that's very needed, especially for the youth today. And so definitely kudos for what you do for the kids and going into schools, and for sharing your story. So appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Timon. It was an honor to be on this. It's fun.
Yeah, man. So I think that'll do it for this week. We're going to be getting these up on YouTube for people to rewatch, as well as they can also rewatch on Facebook. So I guess have a good week, everyone.
Catch you next time.
All right, peace.